Test, test. Okay, there we go. There we go. What is going on, everybody? I see you, Rich. Thank you for stopping by. What's going on, Seth, Steven? What is going on, everybody? Thank you guys for showing up today. We're going to be getting into there's some news coming out this week for D&D, so awesome. What's going on, Eric? Fry Minis over here. Member for 2 months. He is a Rummager level. Thank you. All right, thank you guys for coming to Dungeoneers Pack Live. My name is Josh. Thank you guys for tuning in. Dungeoneers Pack Live is a weekly live stream I do where I talk about and recap the latest news in D&D and topics that you guys are concerned about or want to know about regarding D&D, my insights, or possible solutions to problems you guys may have at your table. What's going on, Drunken Yoda? All right, let's jump into it. We got two big news. And as you guys can see, I updated so you guys will see your guys' chat up on the screen now. Let us jump into some news, though. So, that is a black screen. I'm sorry, folks. Here we go. So, first up, this Tuesday, they are announcing a new book. Starting, October 12th, we will be getting the announcement of I believe the first half or one of the first books for next year. So dropping it on March 2022, I believe for the 15th right here on the screen, it says we're getting a book. We have no idea what it is. Rumors, the big rumors based off the most recent UA, this could be our extra planar Spelljammer Planescape-esque book, a setting book. It is a $50 book, so it's going to be a weighty book. By the time this actually drops and Amazon gets this out, it's probably going to be a $30 book. But what do you guys think this is going to be? I'm kind of hoping it isn't the Spelljammer book yet, given the most recent UA, which we'll get into in just a second. But I'm not really sure what this could be. It's obviously not an adventure book, and it's not another Tasha's or Xanathar's like book. So this is most likely a setting book. Some are saying it's Mordekaiser presents Monsters of the Multiverse, but I don't think it's that either. Obviously, I prefer setting books. I love setting books. I like when they introduce new ideas so that you can incorporate into your game. So for me, I'm all about setting books. The Magic the Gathering ones are really well done. Whether people want to play or want Magic the Gathering in their D&D, they don't want their chocolate and their peanut butter mixing, but I'm perfectly fine with that. I prefer a setting book. I want this to be the extra planar travel based book, whether it's Planescape, Spelljammer, or something in between. But given the most recent UA, I'm the other half of me is put this off just a little bit, a couple months down the road. In terms of other settings, there's nothing really outside of a fantasy sci-fi setting that I would want in the game. A modern setting would be fun, but I don't think they're going to do fantasy modern yet. They would have to figure out gun rules or actually clean up the gun rules to actually make them balanced. So that's one thing. But yeah, this Tuesday we'll figure out what exactly this is all about. I'm excited. New book season is always fun. We're still in the midst of 2 more books coming, and unfortunately, Fizzban's Treasure of Dragons and Strixhaven Curriculum of Chaos have been delayed. Fizzban, I believe it's just a week of delay, but Strixhaven got pushed all the way back until December. So if you guys are hoping to get those soon, you gotta wait just a little bit longer. But what's it called? Eric Framinis just posted a big old announcement. He will be previewing the book starting tomorrow. Thank you, Eric. Thank you. That I know we got the chat boxes in a little low area, so let me move it here. Super chat. Did you know that super chats are great for supporting Josh's awesome work, but also becoming a patron is even better? He's even saving it to buy his first yacht and needs our help. Let's make it happen. Oh my God, you're funny. You're funny. Not Jeff Bezos money. Get them super yachts. But yeah. Speaking of Eric, yeah, Friday Minis is tomorrow. You guys want to see a sneak peek on what's in Fizzban's Treasure Dragons? He's gonna start his rollout. Big old shout out, I believe 7 p.m. Pacific time, my time, or you guys will get your first peek. So you can definitely go check him out and support him. This is outside of the Wizards sneak peeks they did at the D&D celebration. His channel will have your first shot at actually seeing it. So definitely go check him out. I will be in there tuning in because I want to see what player options they are. So. And I know some folks want to see some of those cool dragons, especially that Elder Brain dragon. 7 p.m. CST. That's probably 5 p.m. my time then. Also, I'm going to be popping right out of work watching this as I drive home. All right, let's get into this UA. So, Spelljammer has been the biggest meme since the since the introduction of 5th edition. Spelljammer and Darksun have been the two settings from the past that people have been wanting forward. And yeah, now Spelljammer looks highly likely. And I'm serious about this. It is highly likely. Travelers of the Multiverse is bringing back, I believe it's 4. Actually, most of these races were in Spelljammer. I'm not sure about the Astral Elf if they've been in Spelljammer, but they fit into that setting. But Autognome, I believe GIF, Hadazee, the Plasmoids, and Thrycreen are all Spelljammer races. I saw a couple articles saying that this was also TSR's their Space Frontiers book. I think I got the name wrong, but they're like renamed versions. A couple of them are renamed from that book, that alternate RPG that they produced way back in the day. But the mic. Check. Okay. Sorry about that. Maybe I just need to get a little closer to the mic. Sometimes the filter, the noise cancel messes up with the mic. All right. Sorry about that, guys. But yeah, so we got at least four or five race options that are from Spelljammer. Confirmed. So let's get into it. I haven't really got to really read into these. I did like a quick quick overview, just kind of looked and got my first initial reaction, but I haven't really deep dive. We'll start off with the Astral Elf. So they are a faction of elves that were obviously they started from the Feywild and then made it to the astral plane and then pretty much adapted. They are imbued with astral energy. They kind of give me very Doctor Who vibes. That they give off very Time Lordy vibes, and I'm for it. So they're going to be humanoid. They're medium. They have the standard walking speed, and then they get access to magic. So they get dancing lights, light, and sacred flame. So very light based, light driven race. They added the new Tasha's approach to spellcasting. So depending on which class you're going to get to choose. You can either use Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma to have these spells align up with what you're wanting to do. I like this. It just makes it so much easier, an easier player experience, and not have to worry about stats or feel like you're missing out. In reality, The only time this really matters is like with Sacred Flame, since it is an attack based cantrip. Other than that, whether this Dancing Lights or Lights were different ability scores for your spellcasting ability, didn't really matter. Anyone else wish these were Astral Dwarves instead? Space Dwarves. Actually, I do when I see some Space Dwarves. I don't know if anybody's played, what is it? There's a game that I picked up on Steam that it's a 4-player co-op game where you're a bunch of space mining dwarfs. And and it's super, super fun. And I recommend it if I can get the name of it right now. I'll tell you guys that, but it's super, super fun. But yeah, other than that, Dark Vision, standard. Fans, Steve, standard. They're elves, so mainly they kept most of what they had as an elf outside of Ancestral Fire. The big other things they get outside of Trance, they get this ability, let's see, Trance Proficiencies. So they get to tap in like into previous elven memories and pick up 2 proficiencies, one with a weapon or a tool of your choice. So that's pretty sweet. So it makes them super flexible. Mainly the big one I think that's going to be super helpful is the tool one. If you're not an artificer, tool proficiencies don't get used a lot, but they're actually another way to kind of like problem solve. Yeah, Deep Rock Galactic. Yes, there it is, Rich. So yeah. And then Trance, you don't need to sleep, and magic can't put you to sleep. So Trance is still there. So they're super, super good. And then there's Radiant Soul. When you succeed on a death save, you regain a number of hit points equal to your proficiency bonus, plus your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma modifier, the one you chose at the beginning. Overall, like I'm looking at this, thematically, there's a lot of light-based flavor into this. So obviously a light cleric works really, really well to keep all on theme. Sun Soul Monk would be another good one to kind of keep everything on theme. In terms of actual, I'm looking at if this pushes in anything that's outside of it that would actually boost up any other subclasses or any other class. Other than that, no, this it seems pretty well rounded in terms of the abilities they want to give you, at least in this playtest version. You get Dancing Lights and Light are a little bit redundant to me because they both kind of accomplish the same thing, just spreading light. Well, Dancing Lights gives you the 5 lights. Light itself, like, is just on a single item. And then on top of that, they have Dark Vision, so it's kind of like, okay, well, they don't really need the light. So yeah, it's like, okay. But these are like good utility spells for your party members that don't have Dark Vision. Oh yeah, and then Ronin, yeah, true. Divine Soul Sorcerer would be another good one, and these are all thematic. They all have the inherent light, but in general, yeah, like what Rich said, the bar proficiencies make it more of a machine to give you access to the tool proficiencies also. So, and the same thing with Rogue. Wouldn't be bad just for the additional proficiencies, but other than that, this is a class that, or a race option that pushes you in any direction. You're not really tied down to a specific thing unless you're really wanting to hit on theme. Balance wise, I'm not really seeing it personally. Like, nothing's really sticking out to me. I'm probably can be completely off, but nothing's really sticking out to me that is like busted. The trans proficiency, I believe, might hit on some subclass features. Specifically with, I want to say the Phantom Rogue, that people might come off as very boring, not necessarily bad, but just boring, that you get to, they're just taking subclass features and putting them as race options. And that's kind of a recurring theme for some of this UA, that there are a couple race options in here that take subclass features and just kind of make them into a race feature. It's interesting. I think it's a little lazy, since it makes redundancy and it makes you feel like you're not wanting to pick options that are similar, even if they are thematically the same. Like, similar, and it works. Oh, that's another good one. Yeah, Stefan. Twilight Cleric, full Twinkling Stars theme. Light, Life Cleric would also work too. Twilight Cleric. Yeah. So I like the Astral Elf overall. It's probably maybe one of the ones that I might actually play if my group ever decides to do a Spelljammer game. I could see like some sort of Doctor Who or Silver Surfer like character. What's it called? The Celestial Warlock would be actually one another thematic if you're gonna go into the whole light and celestial theme. Yeah, it is. It's. I think the thing with Astral Elf, it's not as exciting. It's like it's cool. It's just an elf though with light, so there's nothing really going to be like too exciting about it. But next we have Autognomes. So I was never familiar with Autognomes, but pretty much they're robotic gnomes created by gnomes that are out in space. They were made to be like companions, but they're not based off the lore. They are not like Warforged. They are not like Warforged. They don't have. They're programmed. So Warforged tend to have their own soul. They have their own autonomy, but they give you some nice history things to like have it be that option. So you're pretty much a construct, at least as an autognome. Well, compared to a Warforged, which is going to be like the most equivalent to equivalent race. Warforged are very much alive and they have their own identity. Oath of the Watcher's Astral Self keeping an eye on the multiverse. Oath of the Watcher's Astral Elf, or what is it? There's a ranger that's also guards the plains too. That'd be actually pretty sweet. Both of those would be pretty sweet character ideas. But yeah, so autognomes are very much you're a miniature C-3PO. That's the way I say it. Like you're actually a robot unless you play with the idea that you were given autonomy, you're given a consciousness. And other than that, you're programmed. So big difference is that your creature type is construct. So given that, there's going to be some spells that you can avoid, and there's going to be some spells that specifically target you and hurt you. So those are a couple of things. I don't believe like Fae. We've already seen a couple of races that are Fae. So and Fae lets you dodge some very, very heavy spells. Constructs can let you do that too, but unlike Fae, Construct also lets you get targeted by some pretty nasty spells too. I can't remember the top of my head, but there's a few that just that do specifically hit constructs. There we go, Horizon Walker. Yes. So you're the small size. You have a walking speed of 30 feet. You get a natural armor with armor casing, pretty much 13 plus your Dex modifier, which is cool. Dex modifier, I sort of understand why they would go that way. Considering you're a small creature, and that might be like you're more of a nimble robot, so it makes sense why they go Dex. I could also see arguments for Con for this, or just giving them a flat AC bump, because I think autognomes would be the only ones that would probably be capable of wearing armor. To be like, that's how I would think. Honestly. For flavor wise, so built for success, you can add a d4 to one attack roll, ability to check or saving throw you make. You can do so after seeing the d20, but before the effects of the roll are resolved. You can use this trait a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus and regain all expended use when you finish a long rest. So you give this like little mini bless effect to yourself, which is cool. And this stacks with bless, this stacks with bardic inspiration. This can get like stupid good. It's a really solid feature. I think anything, I think it's a little bit better than some of those, just because you don't have to rely on another player. But Built for Success is solid. A little boring because we've seen this a lot. This isn't something mechanically unique. But it's not bad either. Eric said, I will also prefer the dual creature type. I don't mind the dual creature type, but they need to really define it. I know they attempted to do this with Van Richten's, when we had they tried to do undead, a humanoid, and construct humanoid, but the way Wizards has their rules, they'll say one thing. We've seen this already numerous times with the last two books, or actually with Van Richten itself, and then with most recently with Wild Beyond the Witchlight and the Rabbit Hop. They have rules written a certain way, and then they will completely rule a different way where not necessarily line up. I think the dual creature type is one of those that will present an issue of an unnecessary argument that's at the table. For simplicity, I'm okay with just a single creature type, but if they were to define the rules and necessarily how dual creature types actually work, I'd be all for it. I'd also be all for it for enemies, for monsters too. That'd be pretty sweet, especially like the Elder Brain Dragon that's coming out in Fizzbands. Like, I would like to see that as a dragon aberrant or aberration. That'd be pretty sweet. So, all right. So, mechanical nature, like we've seen in other construct inspired races, you get resistance to poison, damage, and immunity to disease, advantage on saving throws against paralyzed and poison. Nothing we haven't seen before. SWAT Cat Autono makes me want to RP as Chucky in favor, and that's you're scary, man. That is scary. Sentry's Rest. When you take a long rest, you can spend at least 6 hours in an active, motionless state instead of sleeping. Again, this is something we've seen before with the Warforged. Again, specialized design. This is, again, something we've seen similar to the Warforged. You get two proficiencies of your choice, and then you get True Life. This is probably the one that's the most concerning. Just because you're capable of being healed by mending. I get why, and it's totally flavor makes sense, but pretty much you can make you're just off a cantrip. You're always as long as you have hit die available. I think that's the way they're trying to balance it. And depending on how your table plays, this may or may not be too good. If you play a little bit harder game where you're taking a lot of short rest and you're really dependent on, or you have you're light on healers, you need to take a lot of short rests and stuff, then your hit die resource is going to be limited. But if you play more of a heroic style game where you're taking long rests, like you guys are only playing like one major fight and then it's a long rest sort of campaign, this can be too strong. Because you're not really going to be getting taxed on your hit die to make this a limited thing. So this is really dependent on campaign playstyle. Could be good, it could be balanced. And then obviously they have to put the caveat that since you're a construct, you will be able to be targeted by Healing Word and other cure spells. Mending does take a minute. Yeah. So to see if the mending spell is cast on you, you can expend. I gotta look up the mending, but yeah, it's a cantrip. It's like a little spot heal. So even if you're doing it out of combat, it's just one of those things to be concerned since your hit die does scale as your level. So it's interesting. I think it's a neat solution to mending, but it's entirely going to be campaign dependent, 100% campaign dependent. So yeah, other than that, autonomes are cool. You get to be a little robot. There's nothing. I think the entire flavor of them is exciting. In terms of mechanical, there's nothing really unique besides True Life. Everything else, we've seen this in other races, especially with Warforged. We've seen this a lot in the Warforged. Yeah. Thank you, Eric. Thank you. Let's see. Stephen Harris, you have resistance to healing and damage from advantage on saves against any effect that applies to one of your creature types and not another. Simple rule. Yeah, gold creature type is going to be it's a tough one because just how they wrote some of the spells and how they target, and they have to pretty much they have to define and agree on which creature type takes dominance. So yeah, I think they would have to set rulings on that up. But autonome character idea or subclasses, classes that I think succeed with this. Again, autonome doesn't really push in any direction, but your skill-based classes like your rogue and bard are actually really solid for this. You gain tool proficiencies of your choice. So again, access to more tools. This would be really, really done with an artificer who already gets access to a bunch of tools. And then you're just going to add more proficiencies on that just to beat the tool guy. Character ideas. This would be pretty sweet to play Pinocchio, like a space Pinocchio if you do a Spelljammer campaign. Even if you have another player be a Geppetto sort of character. That'd be pretty sweet, like an artificer that's a Geppetto that makes constructs, and your Pinocchio assistant. Other than that, it's conceptually it's exciting. Mechanically, I'm kind of bored because it's just Warforged with a true life, and that's like it's cool. Like I like Warforged, but it's like okay, I've seen Warforged enough. All right, now this one is the biggest one people have been actually calling for, especially the when they were appeared in one of the monster books. I believe it was Mordecanians where the GIF appeared. So GIF had been one of the high demand races, and unfortunately, they have one of the shortest racial traits it offered, but they're strong. They're really, really strong. So GIF are humanoid. They are medium. They have a walking speed of 30 feet, but also a swimming speed of 30 feet. So they that's part of their hippo flavor. And then they have damage dealer. So when you roll a 1 on a damage die for a melee attack, you can re-roll the die and use the new roll. You can do so no more than once a turn. So this takes aspects of like, I believe it's, I forgot which fighting style. I think a great weapon fighting style. So whenever you roll a 1 on the damage die, you can re-roll it. But you have to use the new die, and then it's once per turn, so it's always on. So I believe they should stack, depending on what it is. So yeah, it is GIF. It is not GIF. This one is GIF for sure. It's GIF. I know they added the little funny clause saying right here, the GIF are split into two camps concerning how their name is pronounced. Half of them say it with a hard G, and half of them say it with a soft G. It is officially GIF. This is just like a fun little thing, but unfortunately, now if they set this in stone, so to say, you're gonna see people arguing on the internet like always. But it is GIF, hard G. Then we got the Hippo Build, which is pretty much it's strong. So strength-based ability checks and strength saving throws. So that's giving you obviously Barbarian Rage without having to do Rage without a resource management on it, or one of the advantages of being enlarged from the enlarge reduce spell. And then you also get you are considered one size larger when determining your carrying capacity. So that's a trait we've seen in the Goliath and other bigger races. But having advantage on strength-based ability checks and saving throws is stupid good. But my problem with this, specifically this part, this becomes super redundant, and makes you not want to play as a barbarian. You're taking a class feature and just throwing it into a race. So while if somebody you can flavor wise and it's still fine playing a barbarian GIF, you don't really get to maximize all your abilities. Like only when you're not raging, you'll have the advantage on strength abilities and strength saving throws. And rage does give you a bunch of other benefits when you're raging, but there's an overlap that you gain no benefit. And while this is cool, this will be good in general, good for other strength-based builds, and it's really, really points you towards strength-based builds, especially and melee frontliners. Like GIF is a good frontliner race. It's a little short on stuff, but these two racial features are really strong. They're not limited on how they're used per based on a proficiency bonus or anything. Like you're just limited for damage dealer on once per turn as long as you roll a 1. So I'm like, and that's still good. There's a good chance you're gonna roll a 1 on a damage die, especially if you're using stuff like a two-handed I believe it's a great sword. Or you're rolling 2 damage dice for your damage. So yeah. GIF Obviously, classes that benefit for this are going to be Paladin, strength-based Paladin, strength-based fighters. Barbarians, unfortunately, kind of get semi-crafted. Like, your rage is overlapped with Hippo Build, but they still benefit from the damage die for a damage dealer. So yeah, it's great if you play with a stacking advantage rule, though. Okay, see, I am not familiar with that one, but yeah, like certain tables might actually allow you to like benefit off of this, but rules as written, it's just yeah, it's like you kind of feel you're cheated out a little bit. GIF are interesting because they really honed in on the fact that they are large and in charge, which is cool. Outside of the speed, like the swimming speed, I don't know if this makes me feel like I'm an actual hippopotamus person, though. I'm perfectly fine if they like tone or nerf a couple of these features, like these two features, to give us maybe like another racial trait that actually puts more of hippopotamus flavor or more like actual lore flavor for the GIF, because GIF are synonymous with using firearms. And firearms, while it's an alternate rule and alternate weapon for 5th edition, it would be nice to see some sort of tool proficiency or something where that alludes to them being good with firearms. Other than that, GIF are just based on the racial traits. They're a good frontliner class, despite the lore and flavor of the class depicting them as being blasters. Every picture I've seen of GIF, it's them shooting stuff. So yeah. So Hadazi. Okay. This was gonna be another humanoid. Pretty much these are monkey people, but what they have like the skin similar to a flying squirrel and a bat. Right under their arms, so you can either make them small or medium. They have a walking speed of 30 feet and a climbing speed equal to their walking speed. They have dexterous feet. You can use an object action as a bonus action, which is pretty sweet. That is, I believe, this is ripped straight out of the Thief Rogue, which is unfortunate. It's another instance of them taking a subclass feature and then giving it to a race. But they have glide, which is cool. Let's see. When you fall, you can move up to 5 feet horizontally for every 1 foot you descend. When you would take damage from a fall, you can use your reaction to reduce that fall damage to 0. And that is pretty much it. That is the Hadazi. Nothing really points us in any direction. Obviously, just don't play if they keep it as is. Just don't play a Thief Rogue. You get the benefits of being a Thief Rogue with at least this, and then on top of like being anything else. The glide is cool. I'm not too familiar with the Hadazi themselves. I think there's nothing that screams like monkey outside of dexterous feet or ape. But the glide is strictly unique to them, so they are very much they're a semi-monkey person, I would say. There are monkeys that jump from tree to tree, but they don't necessarily have membranes like this. They're cool. Like, I have nothing really like to say about it. Like, dexterous feet though is only my big concern, just because you are taking another subclass feature and putting it into a race, and then there's going to be a bit redundancy if it just so happens somebody wants to play a Thief Rogue and wants to play a Hadazi. Other than that, there's nothing that really these features point out to anything directly to another race. I think the glide feature and the climb features do add some mobility for those that want to do melee. And want to make a melee, because normally you're kind of just stuck on a 2D playing field, but having a full climb movement speed and then having the access to glide to kind of jump to another area helps frontline classes, especially early on before you guys get access to flight and stuff. Other than that, you can make Diddy Kong now. You can make Donkey Kong, sorta. You can always just like reflavor the glide as something else if you want to play like just a full-on ape. Yeah, Planet of the Apes now. I can just see in a Spelljammer campaign where my group would go to a planet that is all apes that's been taken over. Hey, have a good one, Eric. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for the for the donos, brother. Always, always. Again, Monday, tomorrow, he is doing the first look at Fizzband's Treasury of Dragons. So go ahead and check him out. 5 p.m. PST, 7 p.m. CST. Go ahead and check out and support Fry Minis. Awesome, awesome content. And getting first dibs on all the new books coming out. Alrighty, let's move on to Plasmoids. And then after that, then it's the Thryking. And then we're going to move on to the topic of the day. But Plasmoids pretty much ooze people. It's pretty sweet. I can see this like being in not just a Spelljammer campaign, but I can see this in Ravnica as being a member of the Simic. Also, I can see this race in like Ravenloft, like as you're a sentient evil ooze monster that's come to life. So I see a lot of this cool stuff. Again, small, medium size. You get to determine standard movement speed. Then they get amorphous. You can squeeze through a space as narrow as 1 inch wide, provided you're wearing and carrying nothing. You can also have advantage on ability checks you make to initiate or escape grapples. So this is pretty sweet. Oh, okay, so this 1 inch movement thing, it kind of reminds me of the feature that was taken away from the Fae, where they for the fairy, where you can actually squeeze. They shrink themselves down and squeeze through small spaces. It's pretty much similar without the whole you're shrinking. It's just your slime and just kind of through the wall. Having the advantage on ability checks you make to initiate or escape a grapple is pretty sweet. It makes them not dependent on being a strength you're not as dependent on strength-based builds as you could be. The strength bonuses are going to help out a lot. Tinfoil Hat Theory, Stefan asks, definitely too much credit to Watsu. What if these abilities are being stolen by new UA's hint that these abilities are changing in Anniversary D&D? Considering that some of these features are defining features or like really based to where they're coming from, I don't think they're going to change them. Like the advantage on strength based ability checks and saving throws for a Barbarian. That is like standard for Rage. So like you changing that and taking that away from it so that they can put it in race options or altering it away, I think is gonna frustrate people or upset people. Seth saying Plasmoids, they can see them as an is it weird. Plasma Barbarian, it's more common than you would think. Standard Dark Vision, we'll go back to Plasmoids. Standard Dark Vision, they can hold their breath for an hour, so they still need to breathe, but they have a longer breathing span. They have natural resilience, so they're resistant to acid and poison damage, and you have advantage on saving throws against being poisoned, which is pretty sweet. Then Shape Self, if you are not incapacitated, you can reshape your body to give yourself a head, 1 or 2 arms, and 1 or 2 legs, and makeshift hands and feet, or you can revert to your limbless blob. As a bonus action, you extrude a pseudopod that is up to 6 inches wide and 10 feet long, or reabsorb it into your body. You can use this pseudopod to manipulate an object, open an unlocked door or container. All right, so you get like you can create an extra like little flubber like limb. That is pretty sweet. I really like the flavor of Plasmoids. I know I've seen like a ton of homebrew options to play some sort of ooze creature. This fits in a lot of settings. Seth saying, this can be an is it weird? Yep, this can also be on part of the is it for Ravnica. Again, perfectly fits with Simic. And Ravenloft, you can be you can actually be like a ooze monster that has taken the form of somebody. And then Black Kevin, Plasmoids are the T100 or T1000 or Majin Buu. Yep. Like, just that alone, you guys are just plopping out ideas, and it gives you a lot of room and play for this. Obviously, the advantage on strength or on grapple checks are it's good for anybody trying to do the grappling builds. They're not as powerful, I guess, but having a melee person that can kind of give you a non-magical crowd control option is pretty sweet. This was probably the one I actually liked the most after reading it now. You can do some really, really cool horror-driven stuff or like very science fantasy stuff with this kind of character. Obviously the advantage on grapple pushes you towards possibly strength-based characters or ways to manipulate the grapple. Other than that, though, everybody kind of benefits from this. I can see the shape self because it doesn't necessarily, and I think they need to clean this up. When you're forming the head, arms, pretty much to your body, if it's very similar to the changeling, where they can kind of just pick whatever they want, like whatever person they want, and they are that person. And I'm wondering if that's going to be the same case of that, because then that opens you up to potential social characters playing in more espionage games. They'd be good for like a bard at that point, or rogue that's more focused on talking to people. Even maybe a sorcerer or paladin that are going to be more prominent face, or even a warlock that's a face. At this point, I would love to see a warlock that has a patron like a ooze that would fit perfectly with this. So yeah, Plasmoid Mercy Monk, literally made of medicine and poison. See, that's pretty that's pretty sweet. Yeah, Plasmoid, definitely my favorite. It's probably my second favorite. But yeah, I don't really see it pointed in any other direction. I think there needs to be a little bit of clarity on how shape self works in terms of like what you can change into, like at least for the hands and feet, if it's going to be working similar to like disguise self and stuff like that. Giving advantage, resistance to poison damage, it's fine. Poison's crap anyways, so it's like, for me, it's like, this is not that bad. Ooh, Fathomless Ooze and Tentacles. Can a pseudopod cast spells? Okay, so based off of here we go. So this is the rules for the pseudopod. So you can manipulate an object, open an unlocked door or container, store, retrieve an item from an open container, pour it out the contents of the container. They can't attack, activate magic items, or carry more than 10 pounds. So they're very much a reflavored mage hand. So I don't think you're going to be able to use them to cast spells. I think that's something that they do need to clear up a little bit, though. Like if they're going to hold... yeah, that's something they need to add, because it's very vague, but considering that it can attack and you can't activate magic items, I would assume you can't use it to, cast spells either. Other than that, Plasmoids are pretty sweet. Obviously, you're probably going to see Slime Girl character types pop up a lot, unfortunately, but I think that'll just be an internet thing and not necessarily in your games too much if you're playing at home, unless you're the person that wants to make Slime Girl. But power to you. Do what you do what you want. Last one on this list is Thrycreen. This is the one I was the most excited about. They are the bug ant mantis type people. What makes me excited about them is that they get an extra limb. So first off, they are the monstrosity creature type. They are medium or small. They have a walking speed of 30 feet. They have chameleon carapace, where they get an armor class. If they're not wearing armor, they can get an armor class of 13 plus their dex modifier. As an action, you can also change the color of your carapace to match the color and texture of your surroundings, giving you advantage on dexterity stealth checks, which is pretty sweet. Then they get the standard dark vision, and then they get secondary arms. So this was like the thing that stood out for me, and it leads to a lot of potential rules play and cool build options for this class. You have two smaller arms, secondary arms, below your primary arms. The secondary arm function like your primary arms with the following exceptions. Your secondary arms can only wield weapons that have the light property, but they can't wield other kinds of weapons, and they can't wield a shield either. So pretty much it's like, you only get light weapons. You can't have a shield, but it doesn't mean your first set of arms can't have the shield or rock a heavier weapon. So that's the thing to note. the fact that your secondary arms still function like your like have the full set of regular hand functions opens this up. Obviously, the big thing is like if you're gonna rock only be able to use light weapons in your secondary arms, well, you can 2-weapon wield there and use 2 light weapons there, and have your heavy arms use a shield and just do a strength like a dex based fighter that is gonna have or a dex based character that can rock shield and have a ridiculous amount of AC with your shield and that, and then still like attack twice, which is pretty sweet. Other options I saw was, since they do operate as your as open hands, you can play spellcaster melee subclasses and not have to take the warcaster feat, because those extra hands allow you to cast spells, or hold item focus or magic item focuses, and yeah, that's the big thing. So like an Eldritch Knight Thrycreen would be pretty sweet, because you can have a shield, you can have a weapon, and then your hands do all the magic stuff. So that's things to consider, and then it frees up a feat spot for you to not take Warcaster and instead take something else that would either benefit your character. So FTL races. What do you mean by FTL, Rich? All right, and then they get Sleepless Revitalization. You do not require sleep. You can choose to remain conscious during a long rest, though you must refrain from strenuous activity to gain the benefit of the rest. Then you have Thrycreen Telepathy. You have the magic ability to communicate mentally with any number of willing creatures you can see within 120 feet of you. Contacted creature doesn't need to share a language with you, but it must be able to understand at least one language. Your telepathic link to a creature is broken if you and the creature move more than 120 feet apart. Or either if you is incapacitated or if you mentally breaks the contact. No action required. Pretty much this is kind of like a way to give like some psionic ability, but also have like the high mind feeling. 120 feet is a very, as long as you can see them still, but it's a very long distance. I would not be surprised if that distance gets shortened or nerfed a bit to be kind of weaker than message. But other than that, it's good. Thrycreen are kind of my favorite out of the bunch. Now Plasmoid is a second. Thrycreen Way of the Astral Self Monk, embracing their inner Shiva. Yeah, I can see a ton of like fun options. Thrycreen themselves are gonna be dex based, especially if you want to take advantage of the armor class bonuses here. But then having the secondary arms and wanting to use light weapons is another good thing. They give you a lot of play. You're not really stuck to just being that a dex-based character, though. You just take more advantage of some of your other features. But the secondary arms gives you so much play in terms of like what you can actually do and not have to take certain options, especially with on it play like a melee spellcaster. Like I said, you don't have to take Warcaster now, since the secondary arms are going to be able to handle the magic casting for you. So so some of the they can hold some components, or they can have a magic focus in hand, while you can have a shield and a weapon in your main hands. So yeah. But yeah, I'm excited. I think overall, the GIF needs to be kind of trimmed down and expanded, if you guys understand what I mean. I wouldn't mind seeing these two being weakened, so that we get one or two more racial traits that give us more flavor. As it is, it's a really strong option. Period. Hadozi are flavorful. And they also get like they're kind of shortchanged a little bit. There's nothing that really screams monkey to me, and I wouldn't mind seeing maybe Dexter's feet removed for something that feels a little bit more like an ape would do so. There's some stuff in the lore that I saw get popped up that they have an instinctual sense of community, and that's how they use to survive. So I wouldn't mind seeing some maybe this taken out, and maybe them like having some sort of being able to have charisma advantage on charisma checks if they're giving or persuasion or stuff like that. So yeah, Plasmoids are really look fun. Like that actually looks like a fun class or race option to play as. Opening up some really interesting roleplay opportunities, especially with like Shape Self, Ape, Ape Strong. And other than that, Astral Elf and Autonome. Autonome is super flavorful, but just like Astronome, I find him a little boring. Just because we've seen these features again, and Astral Elf itself is boring just because it's another elf. So yeah. So that's what I think of these. I'm super excited. Pretty much, we're getting some sort of extra planar supplement in the future. So soon as they get official releases, I'll do an official video on this. And for sure, you will probably see a Thri-kreen build in the future, as soon as it officially releases. Because I would love to. I have a lot of ideas formulating on like how to, not necessarily break it, but how to use secondary arms in different ways. And then that's why I need some time to develop and see like what that set of like how that interacts with the rules itself and what kind of character options I can actually spawn. So yeah. Other than that, we're gonna go to the question of the week. We're gonna run a little over today, but that is perfectly fine. We're gonna go question of the week though. Now we're actually, how do I build characters? So I wanted to ask, how do you go about creating and building your character? So I had a bunch of amazing answers in the community. If you ever want to, I post these, and if you want to leave your answer, I post these on the community tab on YouTube. You can always go there. I try to get them up every Tuesday, latest on Wednesday, and I also post them up in the Discord, in the official Dungeoneers Pack Discord. You can find the link to the Discord in the description below. This is your answers. Seth Taylor said, I draw a lot of my characters based from Magic the Gathering cards and color themes. From that initial concept, I try to optimize while still holding to that theme. One character I love to play seeing is Jagima Goblin Storm Sorcerer. That was inspired by the Timor and Lumia with its abilities to grant a creature flying until the end of turn. Okay, I know this card. It is one of the early legendary cards from the original Ravnica set. It's a very, very fun card. I like this character idea a lot. But yeah, Magic the Gathering cards are a good way to draw inspiration on characters, whether it's the image themselves or the mechanics, especially for the Magic the Gathering settings that are now in 5th edition. Okay. Can you dual wield shields? If so, they can have a shield on the main arms and have 2 short swords on the small arms. I'd have to look into that. I've never actually thought about wielding 2 shields and the implications of that. Tin Can Whiplash said, my method for creating D&D characters often involves taking a traditional character archetype and slightly twisting it to make it more interesting. For instance, the Fiend Pact is one of the most classic Warlock patrons, so what I do is pick an unorthodox, out-of-the-box race to pair it with, in this case, the newly introduced Hexagon race. That is another interesting way to kind of like change or alter something like a trope, you said, or an archetype, and then changing it to make it a little more interesting. A rabbit folk that is tied to a devil is evil and interesting, and I like it a lot. Drunken Yoda says, one is looking at the classes and choosing one I like and wish to explore. Then I start pondering how this guy got this way, and from there on I start adding stuff to its background. So it's a very semi-mechanic driven approach, but then taking the RP path to go and get to your mechanical spot, which is perfectly fine. And it's very, I see that as another common path a lot of people take. They want a class or subclass they want to play, and then they build the RP behind it. Star Trek Zach says, usually I start with feeling or a single idea of a personality, something like nerdy mommy's boy with attachment issues, or creepy loner with Napoleon complex and obsession with explosives. Then build all the mechanics around it. And then go to Hero Forge to kind of define a look. Yeah, this is a very RP driven, and then you build your mechanics around it, and that is something I do myself. The NPC, to think of the characters, I sometimes listen to music and think of a song as the new character's theme song and build a character around the song. That is a fun way to do it. Building around a theme song I'm taking inspiration from that. Ig Vital, start with some ideas. I have a core concept of the character and the backstory, then choose everything to build it as close as possible to that core concept, adding or cutting out things until I 100% are happy with it. Taking inspiration from all forms of pop culture media right here, and then try to portray the character. So an example he gives, like Bruce Lee for my monk, Errol Flynn for my swashbuckler, Kay from King of the Fighters for my actor slash ninja, which is perfectly fine, perfectly good way. I have a bunch of builds that are pretty much inspired by character tropes from um, a lot of pop culture media. My most recent one was a Hexagon build that took inspiration from like Rocket Raccoon and Bucky O'Hare. You guys can check out too. For builds on the channel, I tend to go that route a little bit more than I do personally at times. So, Jalen Smith, I usually come up with a concept, take inspiration from other characters. Though most of the time I do, I point by and I want to play something thematic and playable. Understandable. And other than that, Trey Enigma, I use the site Hero Forge to kind of figure out what I want to do, create a concept from there, and I'll figure out what class I want to be, and then their background. So going more for a visual approach. And Menace, I get inspiration from my favorite movies and TV shows. And the fun one, No Fun Allowed, said I rolled 3d6s for each stat, roll down the line, and work with what I got. If you ever guys get a chance, go check his channel out. It's very DM focused, where he goes over recent campaign books and helps you guys run them. Very fun channel. Definitely go check it out. He was on the Wild Beyond the Witchlight live stream I did. Him and Steely Sam. I recommend you guys both check out No Fun Allowed and Steely Sam. All right, let's get into it. So, how I approach character building, there's two ways. So when I started playing D&D, I think the most common way for a lot of players was the mechanical approach. So what had me take more of a mechanical approach to playing D&D, when I started playing D&D, I mainly play competitive Magic the Gathering in a local and regional level, and then also playing a lot of MMOs during high school and in college. I was very much focused on mechanics and trying to essentially optimize and min-max, not necessarily worrying about the character. So this is fairly common. I see this a lot in optimizing circles and a lot of optimization and min-maxing talk, especially coming from more mechanical-based games or competitive games that it's all about every little edge that you can get. It's fairly common. So normally I would take a class or find a subclass I want to play and find the best way to do it, regardless of what my character was supposed to be. But what ended up having me switch out of this was the very fact that I wasn't able to connect with the character. I get very bored after I was able to do the thing I wanted to do, or the combo, the whatever set of mechanics I was trying to achieve. I got bored and wanted to do the new thing. I wanted to go to the next character and do the new combo that I saw or read or realized when I was looking at player options. What got me to switch out of that was very much Critical Role and other character-driven media. So it wasn't just Critical Role. Seeing how the players there were able to just so they themselves as players connect to their character, but also just make decisions based off of what their character would do, not necessarily what if they were good or bad at the mechanics. They themselves would always try. And then there are other character-driven media, so like stuff like comic books, because I'm a big comic book nerd. Other movies and stuff where it's very cinematic, obviously, and character-driven. And wanting to somehow emulate that in a way that, or people are gonna get that same feeling if I was watching a movie or reading a book where I felt connected to that character, but I wanted my actions to be at the forefront. So, what got me to switch to a more concept-driven method also was that I felt I needed to challenge myself. So, even though, as you could tell on the channel, I shy away from optimization or min-maxing. with my builds. I try to just fit within the confines of what the idea is and at least make it viable now. I myself am not the best optimizer. I don't really care too much for the math of the game. It's not my forte. And for those that want to see that, I can point you guys to some channels that'll help you look at the math of the game. But even then, the math, there's arguments based on like whether the math is correct or not. That's not stuff I really care too much about. I most of the time, if I'm optimizing in a way, is does it allow me to do the thing most of the time, or can I just roll a lot of dice and feel good about rolling dice? But I changed to this concept forward method. Wanted to challenge myself, so that try to make the best version of this character within the confines of the rules and the confines of the concept, and not try to break out of it. So that is my current approach. So previous approach is mechanical, 100% viable. Some people don't get out of that, and that's a perfectly fine way to play. There's nothing wrong with it. I prefer a concept forward approach. So the basic idea of a concept forward approach is you take a concept idea, a theme, or something that's not necessarily based on the mechanics and that's not mechanic driven, and then you build around it. So it's polar opposite to mechanical driven approach. A mechanical driven approach is you take the mechanic and then you build the role play behind it, and then but you're more mechanic in rules forward on that one. So for me, normally, what I start with a concept, an idea, or a theme. For example, like if you want to play a superhero, or if you want to play a heroic version of a race, or what kind of character is tied to a specific god or a plane. So that is some examples of what I mean by like themes, ideas, or concepts. And there's some bigger themes. For example, when I played in Ravnica, my first character was a goblin that was a Boros. The Boros are the military / law enforcement of the plane, but goblins themselves are the lowest of the low. They are pretty much the minorities, representative of most minorities in an urban setting, or they're poor minorities in an urban setting. So in a city that doesn't care for them, and normally is at odds with them and often sees them as a nuisance, how does a goblin go from being part of the lowest member of a power structure in the city to being ones that reinforce and enforce the law, especially if that power structure hurts their people? So how do you get to that point and still be heroic? So that was like the theme I was playing with a lot for the Ravnica campaign, so there's bigger themes you can play with, or there's something simple as a theme. I want to play a character that's like Spider-Man, and they're driven by their responsibility. They have a tragic past that they are at fault that they could have stopped, and how do I play that in D&D? Okay. So that's the kind of themes you can play with. Something as heavy and as big, or something as simple and familiar as Spider-Man. All right. And then the random David said, when building a character, I will always put a bit of me into it, whether it be a flaw or personal thing I'm going through. It'll be in the background of the character, or would be a development. That is another good way to find a way to connect with the character. There's always a little aspect of yourself. My characters I build, I have a little aspect of myself. It's a neat way for me to hone in on the character and kind of build around it. After I figure out with a theme what I want to play with, then I dive into the setting. I look, depending on what setting my group is playing in, that's when I try to find out if my theme or idea fits in that world itself. And if it does, I start to look at which parts of the lore where I can find those. And this is still before I even pick any of my player options. So normally a developed setting has points of conflict between factions. You can look up general history of the world, obviously, and description of peoples and cultures. And most of the time, that's where you can find where your themes will pop up, where your idea will fit. I deep dived into Eberron when we're getting to the Eberron game, and I will tell you, Eberron's probably the best example of what I'm talking about. You could go to Keith Baker's website in the Eberron book itself. There's a Manifest Zone podcast that they expand on Eberron. What's going on? Thank you, Philip D. Thank you for the 10. Thank you. You have a good day also, my man. Eberron itself is really well developed. It's not necessarily how classic fantasy is, where a race defines kind of your characteristics and culture. That it's more so the country you're from, the faction you belong to, will determine kind of where some of these ideas and themes fit. Classic fantasy, you're going to be more reliant on the classic structure where or where mainly your race and your sense of adventuring will determine kind of like what themes you're going to find, and especially if it's not that developed. Forgotten Realms is somewhat developed. It's actually developed enough that you'll find those themes and stuff too. Ravnica and the Magic the Gathering settings are a little lightly developed, but planes like Ravnica, Etheros, you will get to find certain themes that are very tied to the world or the overall what's it called? The overall feeling of the and genre of that setting. You'll be able to find them there. So yeah, do not be afraid to dig into the lore. You don't have to do hyper deep dive. I do like super deep dives, but you don't have to. You can normally skim through stuff until you find kind of something. Wikis for the settings are going to be your best friend for this. If you have the setting book or have access to the setting book, kind of digging around that would be fine. There's a bunch of YouTube channels that dig into lore. They can kind of just Google, and there's a resource enough where you can kind of figure out where the themes are at. At least on my channel, when doing the character builds or looking at the subclasses, that's why I have that section of how to fit that race or subclass or class into the setting, because that's for me, that's a tool to help you guys kind of figure out where these themes or these ideas or where you can play these characters in those different settings. So after that, that's when I jump into the personality. So looking at the personality, it's going to be really dependent on the theme I'm playing and the lore and how those two things intersect. And then based off of that, also what kind of events in that character's life can lead up to the point where those two things intersect and then they become an adventurer. One thing I always do, though, is I always build a hero. I don't necessarily care to play evil characters. I always want to play a good guy. Hey, what's going on, Shrike? So yeah, I don't always want to play evil characters. I always try to build a heroic, so it's a combination of my theme, the world's lore, and eventually those two things intersecting to make my character a hero. And what are the events, chain of events that go ahead and get me to that point. After that, that's when I start looking at my race, class, subclass, background, and feats. And that's when I get to the mechanical aspect of building the character. Normally, if I'm looking at themes and stuff in a setting, the themes that I'm trying to play with in the setting will pop up in certain race options, and will also maybe pop up certain class options that fit well with it, and then I take those into heavy consideration. And so when I get to the point where I start a mechanical building, that's when I take those suggestions and start tweaking it in a way to fit the kind of character I'm trying to play. When it comes to the mechanical aspect, that's when I try to optimize within that framework. But I don't plan out my whole build. So that's the big thing. I do not plan out my whole build. I build my build up to a certain point so I know I get the spirit of my character is actually represented. And then I leave a bunch of room for roleplay to let my relationships, the character develops, and the events of the game influence my character's choices and the character options I take in the future. Yeah, what's going on? I went through the UA. I'm probably gonna chop up some of that stuff later to get little nice bits. But yeah, I did go through the UA. So that's what it comes to my character. I think leaving room to grow and having your character interact and make character choices based off of their relationships and the events of the game allows you to connect better to the game, makes those options feel weighted, and those options aren't always going to be optimal. But that's fine because it's not. The more and more I've come to play, and now that I'm even DMing more, um, unless you're playing strictly raw, which I've never encountered at any table I've played in, it's more optimization's fine. It's a perfectly valid way to play. But I skew towards viability, and anytime you're gonna feel underpowered, normally, you rely on your team to help you out because it's a team-driven game. You're not playing this solo mode. Okay, maybe I need to get closer. Maybe I need to get closer. Hold on. Slight echo. Maybe. Hold on. I don't know why, but let me see. Test. Okay. Okay, here we go. Is that better? Okay. I was trying to get the immersion for Spelljammer. I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. I think that works out. Okay. So not picking meaningful or not picking optimal and picking more meaningful options that are tied to your events that your character has gone through and also their relationships develop is perfectly fine. And in terms of viability, you're worried about like pumping out damage or just trying to make sure you accomplish the thing. Your DM will always help you out with that. There's always going to be magic items they can always throw at you. There's always discussion that you should have an open line of communication with your DM if you're not happy with what's going on or how your characters develop. I know if my players are not happy with certain build or character decisions they've made in terms of their build and stuff, they can come talk to me and they're more than willing to change it. It's more about fun at the table than anything. But really, when it comes down to it, that's really what I do when it comes to building the character. It's more so taking the concept heavy approach and working your way back up. It really just helps me connect more with the game and be more immersed, and that's one of the things I felt I was missing from the game. I wasn't as immersed. I would being so mechanical driven. It was just more like I play this thing. I press the buttons and the combo goes and okay, and just do that every round, every game. Kind of gets a little boring for me. Now, there's some caveats. Yeah. Instructor Boy said there's a great video on this topic with the guys at Obsidian about Pillars of Eternity's ability score system, velocity, viability, and optimal. Yeah, so and that's a big thing. The one thing I've learned actually going into Destructor Boys Discord, definitely recommend you guys going in there, and especially if you guys are trying to develop in homebrew. There's a lot of really great ideas and a lot of great discussions on there. But that's when I entered that, opened my eyes to really take on an approach for more viability approach instead of optimization. I didn't necessarily know I was already started leaning that way, but it gave me the words to kind of figure. That's what I was trying to do compared to other content creators on the channel. But the big caveat I want to say too, in terms of these two approaches of character building, optimization is not bad. These two ideas of going more concept and mechanical driven could go hand in hand. Sometimes you can take a mechanic and that inspires your whole entire character, and then you just build around what that mechanic and the flavor of that mechanic can actually build and create the character for you. I've done that a number of times. But optimization isn't evil, but it's not necessary. It's very hard to make a bad character in 5th edition. The game itself, I think people forget, especially in the optimization realm, that this is very much a team-driven game, and that your character's not going to work in isolation. They're not in the White Room on their own fighting all the monsters. They're very much a member of one team. They're one member of a team, and that they have a role to play. And as long as you're fulfilling the role, you're succeeding at what you're quote unquote winning D&D. And that regard of as long as you fulfill your role, you're doing the thing you're supposed to do. Whether you're doing 10 damage or 5 damage, as long as you're the guy doing that role, that's fine. Like that's the big thing for me. It's like as long as you fulfill the role and are having fun doing it. Yeah, and Indestructible Boy say, yeah, no beef with Optimancers, but games designed to make optimal characters rather than viable ones wind up without challenge or risk, which is fundamentally anti-fun. Yeah, like a pub stop here and there, it feels good. I've played enough. I've played enough first person shooters and playing them on a competitive at times to know that yeah, it feels good when you kind of just like rank higher and then you just kind of stomp a team. But then you get bored because that's all that happens. You're just easing through, or the opposite round, you're the one that gets pub stomped, and it just doesn't feel good. So having that bit of challenge where there's a back and forth, playing in Magic, that's always been kind of like the time I have the most fun of the game is when there is this back and forth where the game can go in either direction instead of just kind of straight through. And D&D, I feel, in terms of combat, is kind of the same way. Or in combat and social situations, anytime you do skill checks and stuff, that's very much the same way. I'd rather have a viable character than a busted one. For example, in my Storm King's Thunder campaign, I played the Artificer before the Eberron version came out. It was the gun, the Thunder Gun one, and it was bad. It was just a bad subclass. I was totally underperforming in terms of the mechanics, what I was supposed to do. But I still fulfilled my role of being the information gatherer, and I leaned into also being the party face, and just found different and unique ways to use my action economy to be viable in combat. And my character was totally viable. It was probably my favorite character I've ever played, but also my group very much likes that character also. And it wasn't because I was doing massive damage. Like our last fight was against spoilers. Emerith, a blue dragon, and the gun itself is thunder damage. Emerith is she has mitigation against thunder and lightning, so it's just one of those things. Like my character was totally crap in that final fight, but we still won. So yeah, Thunder Cannon was rough. So, and the Alchemist at that time was no better. So yeah, that's my character approach. Very simple. Very straightforward. This is the approach I take with most of the builds on the channel. If you notice too, though, at least with the builds, I only go from levels 1 to 10. The big idea for that is so that I want to give you guys some sort of like rough idea, a general direction, and give you guys enough room to do what you want with it, or just inspire you enough to be like, okay, I like the general idea, but I'm going to take it and do my own thing. It's not that... Nothing against other channels that do this, but a big concern I have with me, I'm very conscious of the type of ideas and stuff I put out. I don't want to attribute to the noise and sometimes negativity or sometimes the unnecessary arguments that float around in the tabletop space. It's more so me wanting to foster positivity, but also give you guys a little bit of inspiration to do what you want and have fun doing it. My builds are not the most optimized at all on the channel, but I'm hoping they come across as fun. I know there's a few of them that have more optimization driven ideas in them, but not necessarily that they are completely optimized. And I'm perfectly fine if like that's not your thing either. So yeah, that about does it for today. Thank you guys for popping in. The first half of this, actually the first hour of this was all about the UA. You guys can go back and check the VOD. I, in general, wrap up on that. It's interesting. I think GIF need to be nerfed so they can get more racial traits. I want some more flavorful stuff that's not necessarily driven on strength. I want to feel more like a hippopotamus that also maybe has some stuff with guns, because the GIF are associated with firearms. Hato Z are interesting, but I want them to be more monkey. More monkey-esque, more ape-esque. Astral Elves and Autognomes are cool, but they're a little boring. They're features that we've either seen before, or Astral Elf is just another elf. And while it's cool, they have some cool flavor, which I like the flavor. They're necessarily not the most exciting thing I want to see. Plasmoids, second favorite on that list. There's a lot of cool role play opportunities that you can develop with their shape change and their ability to kind of grow their own tentacle. I think they kind of needed to find the shape change a little bit more just to determine whether it's going to work more like Disguise Self or similar to the Changeling shape change, or if it's just you're just growing something that looks similar to a face and arms and legs. And then my favorite is the Thryking, because the extra limbs opens up some fun ideas on builds that you don't necessarily have to depend on certain feats and stuff anymore. And it's interesting. I don't necessarily know the power level of it, but it opens up a different direction on some stuff, especially since I like playing melee spellcasters, and the fact that Thryking I don't need to take Warcaster. Have the extra set of arms to kind of do the magic stuff is pretty sweet. Yeah, I won't not be surprised if those get nerfed. Yeah, at all. Like, I won't be surprised to get nerfed. I think they probably could nerf the hands a little bit more. Because anytime we've seen extra limb features, like the Loxodon has an extra limb feature with the trunk, they can't hold weapons. And the Thryking themselves are able to hold weapons, which is... And I understand they wanted to get the feeling of the hands, but... Then again, Wizards is the best at balancing. They will favor mechanics that are more feeling at times, and as long as the general user base feels good, sometimes they'll just lean that way, and that's what I have a feeling that's what's going to be some of the things. Overall, the biggest takeaway I have is that they are now starting to include class and subclass options as racial traits, and I don't like that. I think we've seen it with a goblin before, and there's some in terms of if you want to maximize your ability to do stuff, and like you want to play a certain class combination that already has that trait, you kind of feel cheated out, and that's what I like. I don't. I think there's other ways that they can do some sort of these flavor things without having to take from other, especially from class and subclasses and their options. I think they can do certain things. But yeah, that's pretty much my general wrap up of all that. Again, Indestructible says Thryking made me feel way more comfortable about my homebrew tweaks to Furbolg and Goliath wielding two-handed weapons with one hand. Ooh, Goliath with a big old great axe. Ooh. In one hand. Ooh. Yeah, and that's my big takeaway. The redundancy in some of these features is, as one that likes to build stuff, but also go into more, and also be supportive with concepts and flavor. The redundancy hurts in that regard. All right. Last few things. This week I put out a video on the Hexblade Warlock, a subclass breakdown, going over its key features, how to reflavor it, and where to fit them into the settings. So definitely go check that out. Next week I will be starting my Fizzband stuff. Drake, Warden, Ranger. I'm going to be taking a look at that, comparing how it was from the UA, and then the usual key features, how to reflavor it, and then where to find it in the other settings. So expect that next Friday. And also, in just 30 minutes, I will be over at Shrike's channel, and I believe I have a link to his channel. I'm going to be on his live stream called Ask a DM. You can pop over and hang out with us there. I'll be on there, and you can ask us any more questions. So if you want to guys continue from here to go over there, definitely go show him some love, and ask me all the questions you guys want, and I'll be over there. Again, thank you guys for all showing up. Indestructible, thank you for coming in. Rich, thank you for coming in. Acer, and I believe Eric, Fry Minis, No Fun Allowed. Seen my content creator buddies here. Thank you. Philip D, thank you for the dono. David, Ronan Hare, SWAT Cat, always supporting. Going in, Seth Taylor, thank you again, always supporting. Steven, thank you. Drunken Yoda, thank you. And yeah, I think that is about everybody. Thank you again for everybody that came in and submitted your answers for question of the week. Again, you can always support and go to the channel and participate in those on the community page, or you can join the official Dungeons Pack Discord in the description below. I have a link there. Also, all the socials are there on the screen and in the description below, so you can support there. Again, thank you guys for showing up. Next week, I don't know what the live stream is going to be about. It'll be something, but it'll be something. And after that, for sure, we're going to be talking about fizz bands. So keep an eye out for that. Again, thank you, Ronan. Thank you guys. You guys have a good one, and I will see you guys. If you guys join me on Shrike's channel, I will see you guys there. Until then, I'll see you guys next week. Peace. Have a good one.